I ranked every single Tera-type from worst to best. Buckle up, folks, because the list I created surprised even me. Tera-types are different than a Pokemon's regular type because they can never be paired with another type, aka no dual Tera-types. Yet. This completely flips the type chart on its head. To make this video, I went through and found the best Tera-type for every single Pokemon in the game. There are a ton of Pokemon, so as you might imagine, this took like way too long. I've done a couple tier lists where I rank the types, and in every single tier list, I make it very clear that there is one type that is undoubtedly always at the bottom, the bug type. As such, you're probably expecting the last place type on this list to be bug, but it's not. Shockingly, the type that appeared the least often on my list was Psychic? Now, Psychic is a totally middle of the pack type, but its Tera-type just isn't very appealing. It only resists Psychic and Fighting types defensively, and only hits Poison and Fighting types for super effective damage. To make matters worse, Psychic can't do any damage to Dark-type Pokemon, and is resisted by Steel, one of the best types and one of the strongest Tera-types. I personally think that Psychic is probably the best on a Psychic-type Pokemon that's really offensive, and also has the coverage to hit Pokemon that resisted Psychic-type attacks. There just aren't that many Pokemon that meet these criteria, and for the ones that do, they normally have a better Tera-type, which is why Psychic lands dead last on our list. Alright, well, Bug wasn't last place on our list, but surely it doesn't escape the bottom two, right? Our second worst Tera-type is actually Poison. Now, Poison isn't a terrible type by any means, but it isn't super desirable either. Poison types are only weak to Ground and Psychic, which is a fewer number of weaknesses than most other types. Poison types actually have 5 resistances, including to the popular Fairy type. The problem is that ratio of 2 to 5 is inverted offensively. Poison types can only hit Fairy and Grass types for super effective damage, and they're resisted by Poison, Ghost, Rock, and Ground types. To make matters worse, they can't damage Steel-type Pokemon at all. A Tera-Poison Pokemon doesn't need to run Poison-type attacks to get value out of Stab, since Pokemon maintain their original Stab bonuses even after they Terastallize. For that reason, Tera-Poison can be used as a purely defensive option. It's best on Dark types with middling bulk and good offensive coverage, like Krookodile and Hydreigon. Surely, now is the time for Bug, right? Yeah, no, you're right. This is Bug. Bug has one major strength, and that's that it resists Ground types without having that many weaknesses. Resisting Fighting and Grass isn't terrible either, and though all of its weaknesses are common types, there are only 3 of them. Like Poison, Bug struggles offensively, though again, that's not as big a deal for Tera-types. It's resisted by Fighting, Flying, Steel, Poison, Ghost, Fire, and Fairy types, and only hits Grass, Psychic, and Dark types for super effective damage. Not that many Pokemon actually want to be Tera-Bug, but the ones that do really want to take advantage of its resistance to Ground without worrying about all the weaknesses that come with being a Grass or a Flying type. Rock types in particular have a pretty strong case to be made for being Tera-Bug, since they're weak to Fighting, Ground, and Grass, all of which Bug resists, and Rock threatens the Fire and Flying types that Bug is weak to. Today's video is sponsored by Project Mecha Doge, which, to be clear, has nothing to do with Dogecoin or any cryptocurrency. Project Mecha Doge is a new casual RPG. This new roguelike game supports multiplayer. You can play with your friends to defeat cats. Take back the freedom from the cats by upgrading your own Mecha Doge. Now, I love cats, but it does sound fun to team up with a friend to try and build a super powerful mecha, especially in a world where only animals exist. You will be able to experience the real joy of hack and slash with infinite upgrades. I love roguelikes and RPGs, so be sure to check out Mecha Doge using my link in the description. This one is a major curveball. I don't even want to think about what the comments are going to say about this one, but I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm here to tell you the truth. And the truth is, Fairy is a bad Tera-type. Listen, I know how unbelievable this sounds. I've myself said many times that Fairy is one of the best, if not the single best type in the game. But here's the thing, it's just not that desirable to turn into. Fairy has some major strengths. It's only weak to Poison and Steel, neither of which are especially common offensive types. It also hits Fighting, Dragon, and Dark types for super effective damage, all of which are somewhat common. The problem is that Fairy's resistances just aren't all that useful. Dark, Fighting, Bug, and Dragon just aren't the most common offensive types, and the inability to hit fire and steel types offensively doesn't help. One of Fairy's main selling points is the ability to hit dragons for super effective damage and not take any damage from dragon type moves. Most dragon type Pokemon, however, would rather use Tera Steel if they want to resist other dragons. You already have your own dragon type attacks to deal with opposing dragons, and Steel resists Ice and Fairy as well as Dragon, which is all of Dragon's weaknesses. Tera Fairy does still have value though. Defensive Dark types like Umbreon benefit from the resistance to Fighting and Bug. Defensive Normal types like Greedent can gain a Fighting resistance as well as a couple extra resistances compared to normal. And defensive Psychic types like Slowbro can gain a Bug and Dark type resistance that they're normally weak to. We are 5 types in, and Ice, the second worst type in the game, is nowhere to be found. Well, you're gonna have to wait a little longer because number 14 belongs to Normal. Normal is kind of a boring type overall. Its one weakness is Fighting, it has 0 resistances, and it's immune to Ghost, which isn't that big of a deal. It's resisted by Steel and Rock, and it can't do any damage to Ghost types. Historically, the best Normal types have been the ones that are either dual type, like in DD, or have incredibly powerful stats, like Snorlax or Mega Kangaskhan. Some Normal types can utilize Tera Normal to give themselves a damage boost, especially already strong Normal types such as Zangoose and Slaking. There are also some extremely powerful Normal type attacks such as Boom Burst and Facade. Pokemon that are already using these powerful attacks, like Hariyama and Toxtricity, might want to consider becoming Tera Normal. Number 13 goes to Flying. Flying isn't a bad type by any means, but is it a good Tera type? You might think the flying types are better than they are because a lot of flying types are dual types, which ends up being a pretty big deal. Flying struggles a bit with offensive coverage, being unable to hit rock, steel, or electric types. On top of that, the things that you are hitting for super effective damage just aren't that high on the priority list of types you need to be worried about. The types that Flying is weak to are far more common than the ones that it resists. Electric, Ice, and Rock are some of the best offensive types in the game, but the same can't be said for Fighting, Grass, or Bug. There is one saving grace though. Flying is the only type in the game that is immune to Ground, one of the strongest offensive types. For this reason, Tera Flying is best on Electric, Rock, and Steel type Pokemon that want help against Fighting and Ground types, and on Flying types who are looking to up their damage output. If you want to up your damage output, consider subscribing. I'm really trying to grow this channel to 1 million subscribers, and currently only about 15% of my viewers are actually subscribed. My team and I have been working tirelessly for weeks to put out super high quality, informative content, so if you're enjoying the videos, I'd like to ask you to check to see if you're subscribed or just subscribe. We have some really major projects in the works, so I'm confident that you won't regret it. Number 12 is Rock? How has Ice made it this far? Rock isn't normally thought of as a very strong type because of all of its weaknesses. Despite this, it holds its own because it's able to hit Fire, Ice, and Flying Pokemon for super effective damage. It also gets a special defense boost when Sandstorm is active. There are, of course, some pretty major downsides. Rock types struggle to damage Ground, Steel, and Fighting types, and Ground and Steel types are like always popular. They're also weak to Fighting, Ground, Water, Grass, and Steel type attacks, all of which are at least somewhat popular. That being said, there's still a number of clear uses for Tera Rock. The first is on certain Grass type Pokemon like Breloom and Leafeon. These Pokemon threaten the Water and Ground types that Rock normally struggles with, and benefit from the help against Fire, Flying, Ice, and Bug that Rock provides. Since Ground types struggle against Flying and Bug types, Rock can be used to check them. Lastly, some dual-type Rock Pokemon like Tyranitar can use Tera Rock to shed some weaknesses, gain a power boost, and maintain their special defense boost in Sandstorm. Number 11 is Steel. Actually, I didn't even mean to laugh. That just came out naturally. No, number 11 is Ice, finally. Now, don't get me wrong. Ice is by no means a good type, but it does have some uses as a Tera type that make it valuable under the right conditions. Ice is a glass cannon type. It has 4 weaknesses and it only resists itself, making it extremely difficult to use defensively. On the other hand, it really shines offensively, hitting Grass, Ground, Dragon, and Flying Pokemon for super effective damage. The reason Ice is so high on this list has to do with Ice's incredible offensive synergy with Electric. Electric and Ice are 2 of the strongest offensive types when paired together. The only problem is very few Electric types can learn any Ice moves at all. Thanks to Tera Blast, Pokemon like Jolteon can become legitimate threats and a huge nuisance to deal with since they now have far fewer counters. And because fast offensive Electric types are already not exactly known for their staying power, the more defensive weaknesses aren't as big of an issue. Coming in right before the halfway point, number 10 goes to Dragon. Now, don't get me wrong, Dragon is a great type in general, but you might want to think twice before giving it to your Pokemon. Dragon is only able to hit one other type for super effective damage, Dragon. While Dragon is great at hitting things for neutral damage, between you and me, that's not exactly the best use of your Tera-Type. That doesn't make Dragon useless though. One of the best parts of being a Dragon is your elemental resistances. Tera Dragon is best on bulky Water-type Pokemon. Water types are only weak to Electric and Grass-type attacks, both of which Dragon resists. There is also a case to be made for Tera Dragon on powerful Dragon-type Pokemon like Hydreigon, but I personally think that you're better off either going for more bulk or more coverage with your Tera-type. Number 9 is Ghost. Ghost is unique in that it's the only type in the game that is immune to not one, but two different types. This already makes it appealing as a Tera-type, and when you consider that only two types resist it, it looks even better. That's not to say it isn't without its drawbacks. Ghost attacks only hit opposing Ghost and Psychic-type Pokemon for super effective damage, and the only two types that Ghost resists are the two worst offensive types in the game. The Pokemon that make best use of Tera Ghost are Pokemon looking to become immune to normal and fighting-type attacks. Pokemon like Tyranitar and Blissey are standouts, as their weakness to fighting can become debilitating at times. Tera Ghost is also useful on offensive Ghost types, whose powerful attacks were already difficult to switch into. I don't know why, but people always seem to think that Grass is a way worse type than it actually is. On paper, Grass isn't a very good type. It's weak to Fire, Poison, Bug, Ice, and Flying, and 7 types resist it. Are you kidding me? Here's the thing though. The types that Grass matches up well against are some of the best types in the game. The super positive matchup against Water types in particular I think is worth noting here because Water is like such a good type already, and it also only has 2 weaknesses. Grass resists Water, Ground, Electric, and Grass, all of which are very strong. Fire types are the main beneficiaries since they're weak to Water, Ground, and Rock. They also deal with the Steel, Grass, and Ice type Pokemon that are typically a problem for Grass types. Many defensive Water types can also use Tera Grass, since again Water is only weak to Grass and Electric, both of which Grass resists. Even some ground types make good use out of Tera Grass. This is the point in the video where we're really starting to get into the good types, starting with Dark. It's one of the only types in the game that resists Ghost, and its immunity to Psychic is a bonus. The other major advantage of Tera Dark is a little mechanic some of you might not be aware of. Some Pokemon have this amazing ability called Prankster, which lets them use non-damaging moves with higher priority. Dark types were buffed to make them immune to Prankster moves, which ends up being a surprisingly big deal. Dark does have some weaknesses. Being weak to Fairy is always a bit scary, and its inability to hit most types for super effective damage is a little troublesome. Despite that, Dark is a good Tera type, especially on Ghost and Psychic type Pokemon. It's useful on all bulky Pokemon looking to set Trick Room up as well. It can also be used on Dark types to make them even stronger, and on some Poison types to make them immune to Psychic. Fighting earns a spot this high on the list for one reason and one reason only. It's phenomenal offensive type matchups. Fighting hits 5 types for super effective damage, including the hard to hit Steel and Normal types. On top of that, it only has 3 weaknesses. And though it does only have 3 resistances, being able to resist both Dark and Rock is really valuable. But there are drawbacks. Flying, Poison, Bug, Fairy, and Psychic types all resist fighting, and Ghost types are straight up immune. This is again where Tera types differ from regular types, as it's less important for your Tera type to have super wide coverage as long as your original types can handle it. It's good on Ghost types in particular, as the 2 types that Ghost can't hit, Normal and Dark, are both weak to fighting. It's also strong on Ice types, as the Rock and Steel types that normally threaten Ice are in turn scared off by fighting. Plus, the Flying types normally used to check fighting types are again threatened by Ice. Pokemon such as Lurantis and Staraptor can also make good use of Tera fighting. Their original types struggle to hit Steel, and they each learn a powerful fighting type attack that they normally run anyway and they can now get Stab on. I'm sure, as we become more comfortable with Terrestrialization, many more strong Tera fighting users will appear. Electric is a phenomenal Tera type and definitely deserves its place in the top 5. It's only weak to ground, and it resists Flying, Steel, and Electric. It's one of the only 2 types in the game that can hit Water for super effective damage, and it hits those pesky Flying types as well. It struggles with Grass, Electric, and Dragon types who resist it, and Ground types who are immune. Tera-Electric can be used both offensively and defensively. Electric types can use it to amp up their damage even more, and Pokemon that learn electric type moves can use it for its excellent coverage. The other neat thing about Tera-Electric is if you use it on a Pokemon with Levitate, which is one of the most common abilities in the game, you'll end up with a Pokemon with no weaknesses. Electric type Pokemon who already have Levitate can make especially good use of Tera-Electric, such as Rotom and Electron. Starting off, our top 4 is none other than Ground. It hits 5 types for super effective damage, including Steel, Fire, and Electric, who are notoriously difficult to hit. Only 3 types resist Ground, one of which is somehow Bug. And Ground only has 3 weaknesses. While its resistances to Rock and Poison are definitely underwhelming, its immunity to Electric makes up for it. What's more, many non-Ground type Pokemon learn Ground type attacks, making it a much more flexible Tera-type than something like Fairy. Speaking of Fairy, the offensive synergy between Ground and Fairy attacks cannot be overstated. Fairy is only resisted by Steel, Fire, and Poison. Want to know what's super effective against all 3 of those? Ground. Pokemon looking for an electric immunity, such as Gyarados, can make excellent use of Tera Ground. So can most Pokemon looking to beat Steel types, such as Muk, Copperajah, and Weavile. Lastly, Ground type Pokemon can make excellent use of Tera Ground to power them up further and maintain their good typing. For those of you keeping track, you might be surprised to see Fire clocking in all the way up here in the top 3. Fire has one of the best balances between offense and defense in the entire game, and it allows it to serve as an incredibly versatile Tera-type. In exchange for weaknesses to Water, Rock, and Ground, you get 6 resistances. Fire is one of the only 3 types in the game that can hit Steel types for super effective damage. It also hits Grass, Ice, and Bug types to boot. While Water, Rock, Fire, and Dragon types do resist its attacks, this feels fair given how much value you get out of the type in general. Grass types like Leafeon benefit from the ability to hit Bug, Steel, and Grass types, and have a built-in check to the Water, Ground, and Rock types that normally threaten Fire. Psychic types like Espeon really appreciate the help getting Steel types out of the way. Fairy types are in the same boat, and benefit from the resistance to Steel as well. Just like Fairy and Psychic types, offensive dragons like Salamence also need help getting rid of Steel types. And Fire's incredibly positive matchup against Ice is a big help as well. And of course, some Fire types like Torkoal love the damage boost on their already powerful Fire type attacks. Our number 2 slot belongs to one of the greatest types of all time, Water. Only being weak to Electric and Grass is a huge benefit, and having 4 resistances to Fire, Water, Steel, and Ice is also really nice. Water might not look like a super good offensive type because it only hits Fire, Rock, and Ground types for super effective damage, but because Rain teams boost their damage output so much, Water types are offensive and defensive powerhouses. How do you know if one of your Pokemon wants to be Tera Water? The easiest ones are offensive Water types like Golduck, who need help doing more damage, especially in the rain. It can also be used defensively by Fire types like Arcanine, who want help staying alive for longer. Steel types like Scizor and Fortress also make great use of Tera Water, as you remain a defensive type but shed your weakness to Fire. Grass types like Serena and Abomasnow make a great case for Tera Water, since they resist Grass and Electric before terastallizing. I'm only scratching the surface here, but I hope this gives you a decent idea of how much you can do with Tera Water. Last but certainly not least, it's the GOAT, Tera Steel. Steel is the single best defensive type in the entire game, and it's not even close. It has a whopping 10 resistances and an immunity, in exchange for only 3 weaknesses. Steel is normally balanced by its mediocre offensive typing, except with terastallizing, you don't need to worry about that anymore. Since you maintain your original stab bonuses after terastallizing, Steel can have all the benefits of being a Steel type without worrying about the mediocre offensive coverage. If you're ever lost on what Tera type to make your Pokemon, choose Steel. It's such an incredible type that it's very rarely going to hurt. In terms of the Pokemon who want Tera Steel, truthfully, it's kinda everything. Some highlights include Dragon Flying types like Dragonite, Salamence, and Noivern, who have 4 weaknesses to Fairy, Dragon, Ice, and Rock, all of which Steel resists. Setup Pokemon like Azumarill, who want to buy a turn while they become very powerful. Support Pokemon such as Pachirisu and Vivillon, who want help staying alive for longer. And defensive Pokemon that want to slowly whittle down the opponent over time, like Leech Seed, Recover, Appleton. Again, there are so many uses for Tera Steel, but I hope these examples get you thinking about how you want to use this truly broken typing. And that's pretty much it. I don't know about you, but I think I'm going to be using a team of 6 Tera Steel types. Good luck out there, you might need it.